Hey, welcome to another in a growing series of Fortuna Admissions video blogs. I'm spoiled working with over 30 former admissions directors, associate directors from just about all of the world's top business schools. I'm delighted to share this video blog with one of the most experienced and successful coaches at Fortuna, Brittany Maschal. Hey, Brittany, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me today.
So I guess with your background as a former admissions officer at Wharton, we're certainly going to look at one of the most selective business schools. Now, Wharton, just like the rest of the M7 schools, receives huge numbers of applications from the strategy consultants, the investment bankers, the private equity analysts, software engineers, tech product managers, you name it. And of course, many of those individuals have strong academic backgrounds. They're enjoying a fast-track professional career. So how do they stand out? Now, essays, of course, are a chance for a far more personal narrative and connection with the business school. You know, it's not the next M&A deal that you worked on, or yet another deck of PowerPoint slides for a client that went down well. You talk about it in terms of storytelling and making it very important. So how important is storytelling?
So I actually think it's very important. So to me, so now as a consultant and, as someone that formerly worked in admissions, the essay was really the one part of the application where I felt like I could get to know the candidate beyond their resume. So I think that it's, beyond the interview, like one of the best opportunities to really add some color, some flavor, some personality to the application. And I think that sort of in approaching good storytelling, there's a few, tips and tricks and things that you can do. But the first goal, really is, trying to have that unique perspective, have a really unique perspective sort of show through the essays. And one of the ways that I typically go about doing that is having applicants engage in like a pretty intense brainstorming session. We do that, at Fortuna by starting with the launch document. But in my work with clients, even taking that a step further, we typically have at least 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6, back and forth after that, really digging into applicants' life experiences. And so I think when you're trying to help someone, develop a story, you first need to have them, take a lot of time to really step back and reflect, figure out sort of where they've been, where they are now, where they want to go, and the stories and the people and the experiences, all of the things that have, helped shape them.
Right. Right, because of course, we head through college, maybe have certain clubs, activities that you're involved in. You've got your majors and minors, and then out into the workplace for many individuals. Business school, certainly if you're applying sort of 3, 4, 5 years out into the workplace, I mean, it's a great opportunity to really step back and think about some of the choices that you've made or the things you're really passionate about and drive us, right? There's a chance to really enjoy this.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not something that I think most applicants have had just the time or space to do since college. And so really, putting time aside to engage in that process of reflection, I think also not doing it alone often can be helpful. Your life doesn't exist in a silo. And so sometimes, doing this reflection and getting other people's perspectives and sort of sharing your story with the people that are close to you, it could be family members, colleagues, a trusted friend, can really help, I think, gain some insights into sort of what makes you you, what defines you, what matters to you, your core values. Those are some of the things that I think can help differentiate an applicant. I think in reading really strong essays, you do get a sense of, who someone is, or you should get a sense of who someone is beyond the resume, because the resume is kind of it is what it is. They're going to give it a skim, and they're going to do that with the essay too. They might only be spending a couple minutes reading it. So you really need to have, that unique perspective jump, a well-defined sort of theme, and use storytelling.
Now, of course, the business schools, they're not expecting the next Harry Potter volume or sort of 700 pages of a Russian tragic novel. That this is typically anywhere between 500 and 800 words. So when you talk about that sort of brainstorming phase, how do you then start to really bring that down to the core narrative and perhaps the points that really emerge that would be best to share with the business schools?
Yeah, so there's a few things that I think applicants can do to really take sort of the bigger picture story and break it down into the components that are most applicable for, the MBA admissions, process essays. Some essays are even much shorter than 500 or 800 words. You may only have 250 words in some cases to, highlight the value that you have to add to one of these MBA classes, to talk about your career goals. So I often break it down into a few different components. I think career goals are really at like the foundation of so much of the MBA app work, that starting there, and sometimes it's a little bit more concrete. Starting with something that's more concrete can be easier instead of starting with this, what's my career vision? What drives me? That is sometimes a bit more lofty, and it takes a bit more time, I think, to develop. So I typically start with drilling down with the career goals, and then from there, kind of backing up and looking at those personal stories, those defining moments, the things that have come out sort of in our brainstorming, in our launch doc. And then I try to transition into talking about, your career vision. So what you want to do short term, what you want to do long term, how the MBA fits in to that picture. Within that, there's also the gaps that you have. You obviously are going to business school because you don't know something. You have something to gain, you have experiences to gain. So building out that gap statement, and then taking a step back and thinking about, so why do I want to do this? What's really driving my goals, short term, long term? What do I want my career to look like? And I think the more personal details come out when you begin to think about someone's vision for their overarching.
Some applicants, seem to be born with a silver spoon in their mouths, and it's just plain sailing as they go through academic success at college, and then land this great job. Everything seems to be plain sailing for them, but often we learn far more from the challenges and having to pick ourselves up, or what we might have learned from that experience. So yeah, if you have a good example, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, I think generally one of the things that MBA applicants have a really hard time doing is talking honestly about failure and vulnerability. And I think that is one of the keys to not only good storytelling, but really good personal essays. And so one of, I think, the main components of a really strong essay is that there has to be an emotional component to it. And so getting applicants to find those emotions in their life, in their stories, is often a challenge. And especially for people that are on a fast track in their career, have had really great successful lives, always sort of been on the up and up, no challenges. That's great, but everyone has moments where they could have done something better, and has ways to, I think, demonstrate, this human component, and vulnerability is, I think, one way to do that. So trying to get applicants to sort of uncover and unlock stories that, they might think have nothing to do with their MBA application. Sometimes that's where you have to look to get at, some of these more, I think, just emotional components of people's lives and people's stories. And, back to the brainstorming, that's really one of the ways that you do that. And, it takes a lot of time, and then a lot of time on the applicant's part to kind of dig into these areas of their life that they might think have, nothing to do with the MBA application. But everyone has a personal story. Everyone has had times where they've been vulnerable, have received constructive feedback, some level of criticism. We also talk about that a lot, and it's not easy, especially when you're really successful. So I think just having someone to have a conversation with, to kind of pick and poke at you in those areas that you just might not access on a regular basis, is one way to help try to uncover the stories that might bring that more emotional component to an application.
Right. Yeah, no, you make a great point about everyone is so set on shining in every aspect of their application, and the sense of vulnerability. I guess with Fortuna and the whole idea of putting together a team of former admissions officers from the top schools was much like yourself, individuals that have just read hundreds of applications and understanding what really sort of comes across with that individual, the things that help them to stand out, and that sort of refreshingly personal self-awareness and vulnerability can be very very powerful. Well, I guess that's one of the reasons we have free consultations with people reaching out to Fortuna, and I encourage all of our viewers to set up a time to talk with us about your personal stories, both those successes and perhaps some of those areas, the challenges, and what you've learned from them, and the chance to work with Brittany and the rest of our expert team. So thanks for tuning in for this video blog, and do check out, I think we now have over 30 other video blogs on a whole variety of subjects that literally cover the A to Z of admissions to the world's top business schools. Brittany, thanks for sharing this one with us, and I'll see you again very soon.
Thanks, Matt.